Welcome, 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 my Ohioans, ladies and gentlemen, people across the United States of America. You are in the media with me, Brian West, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. I am locked and loaded. I got my Christmas music, my Christmas ammunition ready. Like I said, not everybody celebrates the Christmas holiday, but I was raised as a child to believe in that, and that's what I've always thought it's a magical time. And I've always thought it was a good concept, a good idea to have a holiday where you reward people for the good. I mean, there's a lot of different types of realities out there, a lot of different theologies, a lot of different methods, different ways of celebrating holidays. Some people believe in gimmicks, goos and goblins, but I like to get in touch with my spiritual side. I don't have a lot I don't have any kids. I'm not married, so I spend it with my mom and dad. So I'm going to try to keep like I said, keep in the format of the show, give you the top 8 as usual. But I may just get a little magical from here to there. Maybe if I sound a little bit undertoned, it's because I'm a little bit stuffy. Like I said, up north, the weather's been up and down. But I'm ready to give it my all. Like, I got my confidence up. I looked in the mirror. I took my confidence juice. I took my sinus medicine, so I've been hitting the weights, hitting the gym, pounding the weights, so I'm ready. I'm ready. Like I said, let me give you the disclaimer. These top 8 stories are only documented for records and to highlight topics for those in the business of talk radio, talk media, and those who just want to stay informed. Like I said, if you want to contribute in any way during the show, or if your signal is not strong enough, you can always visit the website www.600wsom.com, and you can listen in streaming, or the show is uploaded on our website www.methodinc.com during the week. It's usually updated every Monday. Like I said, we got a interesting top 8, lot going on in the news, lot going on in the world. It is my duty as the mediator to give you a clear vision, the top 8 news stories that will get you in tune, not only with your feminine side, but with your informed side. And there's nothing like an informed person, especially when you're sitting there and you're sharp, and people are starting to understand your dialect, your words start to make a difference in people's lives. So let's get to the top 8 stories real quick. Story number 1 that made it to the media this week. Like I said, if you want to contribute during the or you want to contribute anyway before I get to the top 8, I don't want to leave this out. You go to method.inc.com. You can either buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something, or you can just sponsor a program. Like I said, if I sound a little bit undertoned today, it's because my nose is a little stuffy, but I'm fighting through it. I showed up. I showed up for work. That's about 99% of the battle. Story number 1. Education reform on the to-do list for 2019. Yes, folks, education reform is a big thing. There was a story that surfaced this week when I guess the education department is deciding to cancel $150 million worth of student loan debt because of Betsy DeVos. I guess she's been going through it. There was some schools, a lot of for-profit schools that were involved that were, I guess, shut down. So if you are a victim, you may be entitled to some forgiveness. But the education woes that this country is facing right now is leaving a lot of people in unusual circumstances, especially when you talk about federal assistance. And what researchers say, they say that federal assistance is not causing tuition costs to rise. That's what researchers are saying. And then you have the mental psyche that teachers have to go through nowadays. That's why this story crept into the top 8. When you look at the education system, you had I think Bush tried to take some. They tried to make everything regulated by the states, and I think he talked about No Child Left Behind. But the education system in the United States is in a fundamental crisis because teachers are saying they're having a very hard time educating students and getting them to be active and getting. Some of the students are saying that they're having a hard time comprehending some of the teachers. So when I looked up the story, I was finding a lot of different do's and don'ts now in the teacher environment. Like, teachers can't even be socially active with their students now because some of them are getting involved with sexual, because they have social media. So there's been teachers who have been caught having relations with their students. So when you get it, when you're going into 2019, especially when you have two parties fighting it out for power, you can't help but to see education reform will probably be on the list and we don't know how these next 2 years will be with so many ups and downs with the Trump administration. But the fact that there was even a story that surfaced about I guess Kentucky Supreme Court struck down some a pension law that sparked some teacher protests. And if you don't know, there were a lot of teachers involved, heavily involved with the midterm elections. So education in 2019 is probably going to, a lot of Americans are concerned about the way that their children are being educated. You have bullies. A lot of people are homeschooling. They're having a problem with bullies and children messing with their children. And then you have bomb threats. There were more bomb threats in 2018. Well, not bomb threats, but gun violence. There was a bomb threat. There was actually, I think somebody called, I think it was the anniversary of Sandy Hook. And then there was some, it's just, this year, 2018, has changed a lot of the way we think about education because of the fact that there's just been so many unsettled events. Like, you have to worry about so much when you send your child to school now. You have to worry about what they're being active in, and you have to make sure some schools have uniform policies, metal detectors. So when you look at the United States, it's like, do we go back? Is it possible to go back to the fundamentals? Is it possible? It's almost like a jungle out there. It really is. And this story's crept its way into the top 8. It's not been heavily talked about, but I did see when I was reading about the teachers, I said this story has got some potential to make a difference in 2019 because of the fact that just the education department. I mean, you've got levies on the ballot. You've got some people who don't want to give tax dollars to the schools anymore. So expect education reform or any when you can grasp on it. And if you don't have children in the education system right now, it may not be of your concern, but this is the future of America. Education is always important. I always enjoy reading stories about children who grasp to websites like Wikipedia or educational sources online, and they get a hold of these websites, and it teaches them things, and it teaches them how to better their community. Education is an important thing, especially in America. When you talk about reading books and bookstores in the community, when you have the education, when you have people in the education system losing money, academics, that's a big problem because education makes a big difference. You look at the communities like where I live at right now. Youngstown is a great community because everybody sticks together, but there's always these knuckleheads who love to do drugs and they peer pressure other children. But I'm telling you right now, if you want to win, and especially if you're a politician out there and you're trying to win some votes, then try to strengthen the education system. That's the best way to do it. There was a story that surfaced about 2 nuns that were accused of stealing thousands of dollars from Catholic schools. You know, there were when you see stories like this, it's just the course that we've taken as a nation that has people concerned, especially when people are just they don't know a lot. You know, you hear about people who don't know a lot about Christmas. They want presents. They don't understand the principles because they don't read. They don't get educated. So see education reform in 2019 being on the menu. Like I said, you're in the meeting with me, Brian West. Story number 1 was education in 2019. If you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something, or sponsor a program. If you want to stop by, I am in the building at 5648 Market Street from Boardman, Ohio, from Monday through Friday, 10 to 6 p.m. I'm in the business of, pretty much everything. Buying, selling, trading, digital music distribution, wedding, event planning, photography, performing arts, anything that deals with intellectual property, publishing books. Just a lot of things I've been gifted to be able to do and help people with. That's what I do. So if you want to stop by and contribute in any way, any services that I give out goes right back into the community. Or if you want to just contribute while you're watching the show or you listen to the show, you can go to METHOD, number 8, INC.com. You can either buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. Where you're in the meeting with me, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week. Let's get to story number 2. Story number two, religion, education, and human behavior. Story number two is there's so much going on right now where you're having so many different points of views colliding, and in the mediator, it is always my supreme duty to try to steer people in the right direction. Like I said, today's show is mainly I'm always trying to be informative, but when it comes to issues like religion, education, and human behavior, there were some stories that have been surfacing, and it kind of baffles you about human behavior. When you get to stories like this, story number two, and why it's in the top eight, is because there's a lot of confusion. In places like Iran and in predominantly Islamic countries, there was a story that surfaced about Muslims converting to evangelical Christianity in Turkey, and this is illegal in some parts of. Now, folks, I don't want to. What we have to realize is this is we all live on Earth, and you have people who want to live a better life, and some of them do not like or want to live under religious law. Some people just there's different strokes for different folks. Some people can get married, be married for 20 years. Some women can have kids and raise them with one man. Some people want to be free, but the United States is promoting freedom and democracy, and it is causing an influx of interest in the common thinker in other countries where they do not have a certain level of living, and they're trying to get here. And in this story, some analysts saying that the reason why they're trying to be in tune with religion is because they're trying to find a pathway into the United States, and that may be through Christianity. So when you see this on a global scale, and then you see the stance that we're having, especially when it comes to the debates about immigration, and you talk about border security, there are people who have this image of the United States, and it is amazing. And the when you talk about the U.S., there's a lot of things happening right now that is surfacing, a lot of truth, and a lot of truth that is evident. But there's even the facts that some academics are infuriated by religion. They're upset. They're angry at it because some academics feel that religion is causing, or is the reason why a lot of people are not seeking a higher standard in life. They're settling for just bread and water. So that may be why this story probably will stay in the news, is because once again, I was listening to guys like I always listen to guys like George Norrie. I listen to some of these late night hosts. You got a lot of radio gurus out there. You got guys like Billy Cunningham. You got Ron Verb. You got some local guys. You got some females. You've got people like Tracy Whitbush. People who like, and I always say that radio is always the best place to get what you have on your mind off. And that's the benefits of radio, is you can talk about things in radio without sometimes you get heated debates. But when it comes to these avenues that we're talking about, people's way of thinking, I think that radio may be the best place to get your thoughts out. Because if you go to a pastor or if you go to a counselor, they may not be understanding your level of thinking. Some people have some amazing ideas and some amazing strategies for living life, and some their thoughts can go above and beyond the stimulation of brain activity when it comes to talking to some people. And some people think that they're psychologically imbalanced. But if you listen, if you could find a friend, folks, I'm telling you, radio is probably the best place to talk about it. Because I think that in these countries, especially like Iran, Saudi Arabia, if they were investing more in the radio and having different opinions and people talking, getting their ideas out there, because journalists are having a hard time just they're getting massacred. Some of them are getting killed, and the discussion is simple. Some people just have different ways of thinking. And the only way we're going to better these situations when it comes to religion, education, and human behavior in other countries is their environment where they live has to get better. And they have the dream of living freely in a normal life where their children are being raised, and they want to get to America. There was even a story about an atheist couple who complained about holiday celebrations, and they I guess they won they got $12,000 after their daughter was barred from a preschool. So you see what people's beliefs, what trouble it can get them in, and it's just, you've got all these cultures, and you've got churches shutting down, people not believing, people just wanting to live. Then you've got all these psychological problems where people are turned into drugs. When they brought drugs into Youngstown, when they brought drugs into Chicago, it has created hell to get people to recover. And the only place where people can get a foundation is either through religion or talking about it, some type of social behavior. But folks, we're reaching a peak where even religious folks are getting exhausted. They don't want to deal with it anymore. And it's amazing how much of a curve we've taken when you talk about human behavior. That's why this story number 2, is an interesting story. Did you know that fentanyl surpassed heroin as a drug that's most often involved in deadly overdoses? Human behavior has went from wanting to excel, buildings, growth, hitting the weights, hitting the gym, advancement, to just, I really can't say where we've come, and it's creating a lot of confusion. You're at the point right now where people are trying to genetically modify babies. How did this happen? They've got sex islands now, where often different locations where if you've got enough money you can go and so do we need some type of a foundation when it comes to human behavior? I've always liked animals. I like to look at animals because animals have a different mindset. And there was a comedian, Cat Williams. I mean, this guy, like I said, he's out there, but when he talks, it's like you gotta listen, because he says some amazing things, and he talks about these tigers, man, and he's saying about how you put a tiger in it was a great joke, man. I couldn't believe it. I mean, if I look at it right now, I'll probably start crying. But he's talking about these tigers and how they're waiting for a baby to fall over the fence, or somebody to fall over the fence, because they're tigers, and that's just the way they are. There was a story that surfaced about these leopards that killed a meditating monk in India. But these are animals. And then there was also another story to talk about Jehovah Witness halls targeted by arson attacks. So what we have to look at is, are humans just simply just animals with intellect? Are we still animals with intellect? Is religion just another excuse for us to compress the beast inside of us, to stop us from doing what we want to do in this life? You get these guys who, I mean, it's almost like putting a wild animal in a cage, and they're holding all these emotions in. When you look at this story about the nuns, and the story that surfaced about the nuns, and about going to Vegas and taking, or you hear the story about the priest, it seems like it's evident that that people have needs, wants, and emotions that they suppress, and when that beast comes out, you can even look at the situation with the president right now, the business situation. I'll get to that in a second. I'm not going to involve that in story number 2. But there was also some other stories that made it when you talk about human behavior. U.S. gun deaths reached its highest level in nearly 40 years, the CDC data reveals. So human behavior is probably going to be a hot topic, especially when you talk, and around the holidays too, when you've got a lot of religious activity going on, education. Some people who just have a one-track mind. But I'm telling you right now, radio is probably the best place to get your thoughts out. There are tons of radio programs, tons of radio hosts who will listen, put you on the air, and just see how you think, what is your view. And that's what I think radio probably is the best medicine, because I can honestly tell you, if you go to a pastor and you're telling them that you're having thoughts of hanging out with Betty Boo, they're probably going to say you're a sinner and you're going to hell. But if you talk to a radio host, he'll probably try to get the details, get what type of outfit she's wearing, and maybe tell you what you may be able to wear, and see what it is. You can talk about what happens after you get done doing what the wrong, and then maybe the radio host probably could get you on the right path. Let's get to story number 3 real quick. We're almost at the halfway point. You're in the mediator with me, Brian West, where I've found my love, and I've been through a lot, but radio is my love. I've come to understand that. I think Nas the rapper said, all I need is one mic, and radio has really made me feel good. I've been beat up in my life. Confidence been dragged around. I come from a rough city where people are looking for something to lash on to, some type of great hope, and GM is talking about leaving, so I found one mic here at WSOM 600, and like I said, if you want to tune in every Sunday, just listen to my thoughts, show me some love, you can go to METHOD8INC.com, www.METHOD8INC.com, Method8.com. All you have to do is buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something if you want to show me some support, so I can. It's tough to be the mediator. I have to soften up when I want to be tough, and I have to show some love, spread some love, put a little oil on the back a little bit, loosen you up a bit so you can be ready for the holiday season, and there's so much I can explore. But let's get to story number 3. Why the story of Jesus is still a hot topic, especially around the Christmas season. Folks, there are some go-getters out there when if you want a good discussion, you can talk about Jesus to anybody, and they will tell you some things and tell you how they feel. And I tried it last night. I always talk to God. I believe I'm a Christian. I was raised Baptist, so I tried it last night, and I'm going to discuss it. I was tempted, I was sitting there last night. I've been living like a priest for almost like 8 years. I haven't even, if I was to even get touched by a female, I'd probably pass out. I would probably even know what to do. But the story of Jesus came up because I was reading a lot of stories, and I go through 200 a week, and I'm sitting there, and I was talking to my dad, and we always had these conversations, and he was talking about reverends, and then we do get these discussions. But Jesus is still a hot topic, folks. It really is. And it's an amazing story. You got a guy, before he was crucified, he had a friends who turned their back on him, crucified. And it can be often forgot around the Christmas season about what the story really talks about. If you can get anything out of the story of Jesus, just get the story, the concepts. Mother was a virgin, wasn't his real father. God was his father. It's a great story to debut. If you get too crazy in it and you start getting radical, then you may need to take some medicine. But if you look at the story, it's a great story, great concept. Innocent person, innocent the God flesh. I mean, just on a personal level, it's a great story. I'm a writer. Anytime I need to think, stimulate my thoughts, I go to the story. So basically, the reason why the story is still a hot topic is because Israel was in the news. And if you don't know, Israel, they've been moving Israel's capital around. And in religious circles, especially in the Islamist faith, the Christian faith, Jews, and all these people who understand what the Bible says, people are interested in this story. Religious believe that I believe that some Muslims believe that Jesus was just a prophet. He wasn't the son of God. He couldn't. God wouldn't. So there's all this different confusion. And you have all these people watching the stars, the Star of David, and there's even some basketball players who have called Michael Jordan God. Then you have some basketball players who don't believe that we've landed on the moon. So if you can believe, and you can read the story, and you can get something out of it. There's even there's a story that surfaced about a gang leader who now preaches about Jesus. So some people are just saying, this Jesus story is some people are just, just submit. They're saying, this is something here about how we and then I was listening to another radio show a few weeks ago, and the radio host was basically questioning, saying like, where do you see it? It says the spirit. So the story of Jesus is still a hot topic, especially the story of Jesus is probably one of the most amazing stories that you could. If I can get you to understand how you could have a story like whoever wrote it, whoever was writing it, if they were guided by God in this sense, it has caused an amazing strength to come out of somewhere when it comes to people's level of thinking. It is interesting, and some people say they hear the voice of God, and I had my awakening when I was in the military, where I'm going to get to my little situation last night in a second. Well, last night, let's get to this real quick, because there was a story that was talking about a man who said he heard the voice of God on the highway, and it managed to save his life. Well, last night, I was tempted. I like women, and I haven't been able to be active with women in a long time. So last night I was tempted to do something. I had the urge, and I felt it was a spirit, and I said, you know what? I'm going to try something. So I started talking to God, and I said, God, I said, I got a little bit of a problem here. There's this snake that keeps coming into the garden, and he keeps talking to me. He keeps wanting me to be blessed by some love, and he keeps telling me to go out and search and look, and it gives me the wandering eye sometimes. I said, what do I do, Lord? And I said, is it Satan? Is it just natural human emotion to want to be blessed by the presence of a female? And as soon as I did this, I felt comfortable, ease, and I was fine. So, and then when I was in the military, when I didn't get well until I started talking to Jesus, Yeshua, Yahweh, it is something happening in the atmosphere. But this is still a hot topic around the holidays, and that's why it's crept into the top 8. Let's get to the story number 4. Well, I'm glad I got that off my chest. But story number 3, the topic of Jesus still. Let me give you the quick tag. You're in the meeting with me, Brian West, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that made it throughout the week, so you can have something to leech on to, something to talk about, be informed. I'm trying to keep it on a light topic because we're around the holidays, and some people have seen death, some people have seen heartache, some people have seen pain, and some people want some answers. And folks, they say, Jesus is on the main line. Tell him what you want. Woo! Let's get story number 4 real quick. Why Obamacare has been struck down. Bam! Obamacare might be having this coming to Jesus moment, folks, because a lot of people are upset when we get to story number 4. Story number 4 has a lot to do, because this may be a win for Republicans, because they have been aiming for Obamacare for a while. President Trump said he wanted it to implode, and it has called the judge has ruled it unconstitutional. Yes, because of mandates, pre-existing conditions, and there's been some nurses who have been denied life insurance. Folks, the healthcare problem in the United States will probably remain in the news, and it may creep out in and out, but there is a reality, folks. There's a reality that's happening that some people just are not happy with the medical system. People are receiving ridiculous bills. I mean, bills like $4,000, and they don't even have a 9-to-5 job. And I haven't even got to the GM crisis yet. Folks, we are having a problem when it comes to Americans in healthcare, and the government has been trying to find so many solutions. When we talk about The Great Society by Lyndon Johnson, I was talking to my buddy Gary before when he comes here. He's one of the Operation Board Ops, and I was talking to him about just the state and how some presidents back in the old days would probably look at how just governing and how we may have to put a governor in office in the presidential seat next election. We're trying the business thing, but it's creating too much confusion. People are just arguing left and right. Parties can't get along, but we may need somebody who can govern in the next office because there are too many issues that are not being taken care of, especially when it comes to the government regulation. But when you talk about Obamacare being struck down, this is going to cause a lot of problems, especially people who are trying to seek treatment. This is a serious topic, folks, and this is why I crept into the top 4. If you want to contribute anyway, you're in the meeting with me, Brian West, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories that may be important to you during your week, during your life. Being informed is a big thing. You have to understand what's going on, or you won't know what's happening around you. We just had a big problem in the city where 5 children lost their lives because of fire, and who knows what if how things could have been different if people were to be able to come together and trying to make people's lives better who are living in certain different neighborhoods. So, but by being informed, this community, the community is coming together, and people are able to respond because they're listening to the news, they're getting the stories, they're getting the headlines. So, like I said, if you want to contribute anyway, just go to METHOD, the number 8 INC.com. You're in the meeting with me, Brian West. If I sound a little bit stuffy today, it's because I'm a little congested. My sinuses started acting up. I was a veteran. I got a bad nasal passage. I probably breathed in a lot of flammable material, probably messed up my nostrils, but it usually dies down after once the season's set in. But like I said, if you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, the number 8 INC.com. I apologize if I sound a little bit stuffy today, but but I gotta grin and bear it. You're in the meeting with me, Brian West, where I give you the top 8 headlines developing news stories. Like I said, if you want to contribute anyway, METHOD, number 8 INC.com. We're at the halfway point, and we're headed into story number 5. Our book of the month is author. We're going to shout out author Destiny Harris. She is from North Carolina. She has a series of children's books on our website, Author Santa, and some other children's books. If you want to show her some love or buy her books, they are available on the website. All that money goes back into Method 8, back into the community. So that's METHOD, the number 8 INC.com. If you want to show us some support, you can buy something, click on something, watch something, or just read something. Or you can just sponsor a program. Let's get to story number 5 real quick. Okay, what is true about the Trump administration, folks? There is a divide. There is a divide in America that is really starting to heat up. I mean, it is creating such a big interest problem. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define the word liberal. Okay, liberal. The word liberal, if you look it up, if you Google it, it says open to new behavior or opinions, and willing to discard traditional values. And then there's the word conservative. The word conservative, if you Google it, says holding to traditional attitudes and values and cautious about change or innovation, typically in relation to religion and politics. So in this lifetime, you will probably hear those terms, and you will probably never see. Sometimes liberals and conservatives can get along, but with this new administration, there is a lot of problems because you have the informed and the uninformed. So Trump is hyping up his base. He's telling everybody a lot of things that they want to hear, but when you talk about his policies, his aggressiveness as a businessman and as a deal maker, people are having a hard time interpreting what this man really feels. There's been a lot of talk about the neglect that he's done within his own administration. So me majoring in business and understanding that there's a lot of different types of business thinking. You have deal makers, you have angel investors, you have ethical businessmen. So in business, if you understand their state of mind, a businessman has to make sure everything is accountable, and they have to be available almost. An entrepreneur will tell you they rarely sleep. And being a business major and coming from the military and being getting my I almost got my bachelor's degree, but I had to leave early, and then but understanding the business world. So in the business world, there's not too much emotion. There's mainly you have to keep an eye on keeping things together. So there's a lot of confusion with Trump's way of thinking. Anybody can be a business person, a businessman. You have some business people who live their life just mainly off profit. Some businessmen who don't treat women right. They're very neglectful. These are what you call different business types of thinkers, and their main goal is to promote their brand. So what you're seeing from Trump, business people can understand. Business people, there are very unethical businessmen who mingle with prostitutes. They do some very ungodly things. A businessman cannot be understood by this. Just I'm saying some, but what you're seeing is just somebody who has created a lot of links, and he's employed people, he's built buildings, and he's done some things in his life. Most businessmen, most of the women that they get around him love power. They love they're go-getters, they're entrepreneurs. So putting somebody like this in the White House and making them elected, it is not a surprise what you're getting from the product or from the brand, because it's just that's just the way the businessmen do not think like lawyers. They do not think like politicians. Businessmen are just, but what surprises me is the fact that this administration has not been able to get a grasp on spending. That's what's surprising me. But by him telling everybody they have to pay up, that's no surprise coming from the business field. So I'm not going to bat for this president. I think that some of the things that he's done, some of the things he's said, I would never do as a business owner. But he comes from a different cloth, from a different school of business. I come from the school where they're teaching ethics, where they're teaching, you try to have moral value, moral understanding. Trump comes from the school of hard knock business. He comes from New York. And if you go to New York, they have a different state of mind, an empire state. So that may be what you may be seeing, and that may be what is true about this administration. And it may baffle some people. People may not be able to get a grasp, but I think that the guy strategically, I think he understands how to handle certain things, but he is a little off. Every business person is off. I'm not even going to lie to you. I try to live like a saint, but sometimes I can be sitting there in the middle of the night, and I'll be on a different wavelength. But that's just the culture of business. You know, even when you look at if you look at these ladies, these women, and the life that they live and how they put a value on their bodies, some women are different. Most women love power. They love it. They gravitate to it. You look at if you talk about religion in general, you look at King David. His life was the same way. I gotta speed up here a little bit because we got to get to the top 8. But what you're seeing from Trump, if he can get through these next 2 years, it's not going to get any better, folks, because the guy is a deal maker. In the business world, a deal maker is one of the scariest business people you can be around, because they're constantly thinking about what they can get and what you have to offer. So if you think it's going to get any easier, or you think this guy's going to let up, he knows how to manipulate things. He's a master at it. That's just, I have gifts that God has given me as a businessman, but I'm just not brutal. I'm not a prophet. I'm more of an angel investor type of businessman. I like to be involved. I like to read. I like to see growth. I think about long-term investments. I think about sacrifice. Most deal makers think off instinct. They think off emotion. They hurt a lot of people because these are different types of, it's just like church. There's different types of evangelists, different types of preachers. So in the business world, this is what you see. If you're not equipped to be, if you haven't been to school for business, it's just like journalists are trained. Journalists are trained to get the scoop, trained to get the story. These are different ball games. And this guy got elected as that people wanted the government to be run like a business. They were fed up with traditional politicians. So this is what you're getting. This is the product. And you just have to wait and see if he lasts for 2 more years, if they don't impeach him, because the politicians are going after him. Because there's power involved in this. This man has put his name on everything. He's branded globally. You think this guy is going to wake up to tomorrow morning and be called Saint Peter? No, it's not going to happen. So that's what you have to see. And you look at the way he's talking, some of the things he's saying in the business world. That's unethical. But he's a deal maker. You have to, if you haven't figured out what if you go to the school, if you go to school for business, you'll understand what I'm saying. Interest rates, paying up, the way this is an aggressive deal making businessman in the Oval Office. He's built casinos. He's been around women that can probably do the booty do different ways and jump up and down. This is a different type of cloth here. It's almost like a reverend listening to Jay-Z. It's not gonna mix. This culture that we live in right now is the timing is totally different. And to put somebody in the White House who speaks the same language as some of these people, there was a story that they were talking about $500K that spilled out of an armored truck. Years ago, some people would probably return that money, but now there's $300K missing. We're in a dog-eat-dog world right now. And this guy is trying to leverage things out with the border wall. He's a deal maker. If I put a border wall on the menu, then I can, and I say the government's going to shut down, I can get what I want out of the deal. That's what I'm trying to get you people to understand. This is, if you write a book about this stuff, this is what you get. The really important thing here is about jobs, about economics. And this guy needs to start being concerned about that. This GM thing is big, folks. GM has planted a lot of seeds in people's lives in this community. If these politicians or if this government does not figure out how to get money in these people's pockets or the workers' pockets, the working man, it's going to create chaos. You see what's happening in France? Let's get to story number 6 real quick. But the story number 5, when it comes to Trump, understand the truth about him. That's just the reality. Story number 6 real quick. Why the law may be judged in 2019. Folks, ICE arrests continue to rise in Trump's second years. That means that immigrants are getting deported. There's 15,000 migrant children that are now held at nearly full shelters. There's been police brutality. Gun control activists are going nuts. So the law will be judged in 2019. The law is the only thing that has kept anything together. There was a story about Taylor Swift. She's been tracking fans at her gigs, face tracking. There was a report that surfaced about she's been face tracking, saying because she's trying to avoid being stalked. People are. There's a lot of people who are bending the law, and there's even some racial stuff that's going to spur up in 2019 when you talk about the law and getting people to understand. Elizabeth Warren has been talking about racial issues and talking about the treatment of minorities and blacks and Hispanics in this country, Indians. So this is going to be a problem for the United States when you talk about making laws and writing legislation that can be good for everybody. CBS donates $20 million I believe it's Les Moonves. I guess her severance went to 18 women's advocacy groups. So the law is changing, folks. It's taking a different direction. There was another story about a U.S. soldier who admitted murdering somebody in a CIA job interview. J&J will be Johnson & Johnson is hammered about having asbestos in its powder. Police department nationwide has been sent scrambling because of flood of email bomb threats. And America has got a growing cop shortage. Folks, the law is going to be on the menu in 2019. We're going to try to, people are, and when you talk about lawmakers, you cannot have people who have vowed to serve the Confederacy write laws. You cannot have people who have vowed to certain supremacy groups write laws. Or mothers who are big advocates for women's celibacy. And folks, this is what you're seeing. This is why these stories make it in. Story number 6 will probably, when you talk about the law and legislation, people who can write some laws in favor, and you talk about people being in prison, and this is going to be a hot topic because of the fact that the gates are being opened. People are starting to get a voice. Let's get to story number 7 real quick. The top 2 stories that made it to the Mediator this week. Climate change versus conservative theology. Yes. There's talks about climate change, shrinking winter. You have a super colony of 1.5 million penguins that stayed hidden for nearly 3,000 years. And you have mayors and governors that are rebuting the Trump administration's position on climate change. When you talk about conservative thinking and climate change, conservatives will tell you that climate change is BS. But this is going to be a battle as we come along because the debate is heating up. You've had they have the Paris Agreement going on. They're talking about climate talks. Everybody's talking about it. It's affecting people on the workroom floor. It's affecting labor, and it leads us right into story number 8. So climate change and conservative theology. Let's get to story number 8 because they kind of collaborate together. Story number 8. And the fact that you have climate changes. Who will be employed in 2019? So those are the top 2 stories that made it to the Mediator this week. But what you have to understand is that climate change is changing people's way of thinking about traditional business. They are regulating coal industries, big energy booming companies. And if you wonder why GM is cutting 14,000 jobs and will shut down plants in Michigan, Ohio, and Maryland, I can guarantee you that there's a big percentage of it that has to do with regulations and the fact that they've been losing money. If you talk about the Chevy Cruze is still a good idea. Not everybody wants to buy trucks. Not everybody wants to. There's still young children out there who need a cheap, compact car. And I do not buy this Tesla or electric car. GM has an electric. They have the technology to build this type of car. So all of this talk, I can guarantee you, has to do with one big thing that conservatives are battling out with, and that's climate change and the fact that these companies have been highly regulated. Do you know that they have cut 6,000 hourly, 8,000 salary positions, voluntary buyouts to 18,000 workers? Folks, the Russia investigation alone cost $25 million in 2017. So the government bailed GM out. The money, where when you look at business in general, and you talk about business ethic, I talked about business earlier, and you talk about finding what the customer wants and what the customer needs. This is going to be a big story in 2019. Thousands of Ohio school kids pleading with GM, their CEO, Barry, don't you? To keep the Chevy Cruze plant open. Tensions are rising because of the trade wars. Folks, this is a big issue. And I can guarantee you that climate change and the fact that people think that the world is warming has a lot to do with this. Most Americans are pessimistic right now about how the government will work in the next few years, especially if you get rid of the middle class, the working man. If you keep punishing him, it's going to create chaos. Too big to fail. You have a job, you get that $20 an hour, you're getting fed. Folks, this is a big thing. And they're going to have to start figuring out some way to reorganize things, especially when it comes to stocks, and maybe finding some type of public offering for workers where they can invest and be able to get a return. They're going to have to start trying to figure out ways to reorganize these 401ks that these maybe some people who have maybe some of these big time executives are going to have to start giving up some money, giving up some of their property, some of their houses. Folks, this is a reality. The big fish at the top of the food chain has not been friendly. They're talking about cutting jobs. And Ohio needs jobs. Let's get to 2 local stories that made it in this week. City officials are very upset of GM's announcements to leave the community. And city of Warren is still having a problem with drugs, and with after cops seize crack pipes, drugs, overdoses, and everything you can think of. Folks, those are the top 8 stories that made it to the media.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The mediators